Hey, what's up, everybody? BDF 44 coming at you with another video. All right, so a good friend of mine sent me a video, um, and it took me a little while to want to see it. I thought it was a comedy skit, and I was not up for a comedy skit, but it was not that. It was a situation where a gentleman and his father were in a feud with one another. I guess his father, he had come home and he saw his father taking all his stuff out of his drawer and throwing it on the floor, taking all his clothes out of there and just tossing it on the ground, telling him he need to leave. He came into the house and he had his camera on for this whole thing, and his father was telling him he need to leave, and he was saying why, and his father did not want to give him an explanation. He was essentially just saying, you know what, you don't respect the family, you don't respect me, you're not the same person I raised, you're not who I want you to be, basically. Now this individual just so happens to be uh, a gay man. Appeared to me, he had on what looked like makeup, or it looked like he had taken the makeup off. I don't know, but nevertheless, he had come home. Now these two black men, African Americans specifically, it's an important thing because you know how this thing goes with us and our fathers. But these two men lived together. It looked like the son was grown. He looked more like he was over 21, full facial hair, tall dude. But nevertheless, he lived with his father. They said, and it was mentioned in the footage that he paid half the bill. So I guess he held up his end of the bargain financially. But father, nevertheless, was kicking him out, telling him he couldn't be there, telling him to call a lift, you can't be here. And essentially, I guess he was trying to say, that my father is kicking me out because he's homophobic, blah, blah, blah. And the situation there wasn't what prompted me to turn on the camera necessarily. It was more so just understanding that when you have feuds with your loved ones, and it means so much to you to deal with whatever you're dealing with in the moment, and maybe you hear their voice and you don't want to hear their voice, you know what I mean, to tune them out or what have you. Sounds like nails on a chalkboard to you. Whatever the case may be, if you truly care about that person, you gotta squash all that, man. If that's your son or your father, if your relationship is that serious, I gotta squash that. Because people don't stay, man. They just don't stay. That's the bottom line. I'm not here to talk about his identity or take a position on the father kicking his son out or whether or not the father is homophobic. I don't care about any of that. I'm going to tell you the truth. That is not important to me. What's important to me is seeing them two men be so frivolous about the moment they had with one another right then and there. With the time that they had with one another in the flesh, they were trying to hurt one another. Not to judge them, because I remember times like that. I was like that with my mom. Many a time. It was just me and my mom in a little apartment just like the one I'm in, just like the one they were in. And we would be arguing with each other about various whatever. She wanted to kick me out the house because I wasn't listening. It wasn't nothing like what they had going on, but I wanted to smoke weed. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I wasn't respecting her household the way I was supposed to. I wasn't doing the things she wanted me to do as a man. I was dealing with my little mental health issue. I didn't know how to describe it, so it was translating as me being a slacker, Accountability wise, I could say I could have did better. All in all, I remember moments like that. That's the point. And even when I think about them now, I still feel certain ways about those things. Feel, like you were right in some of those arguments or whatever. I'm not going to sit up here and say it's all roses and merry thoughts when I think about my mom as a whole, because we had so many moments of different things, But at the end of the day, ain't none of that matter when they're gone. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. You would love to be back in that room with your mom or with your father, you know what I mean? If something happened to either one of them, knock on wood, I hope it never does. If something happened to either one of them, the other one would have wasted that moment with their father or their son. It's something so frivolous. Whatever the heck the problem is, if I tell you the truth, it could be handled in a different way. If you found out you only had a day left, you would stop that argument immediately. You would put them differences aside and you would let everything out the right way. If you knew you only had a certain amount of time left, I think we live like we think we're going to live forever. We treat our people and the people we love like we're going to have them forever. I'm guilty of that more so than anybody else I know. I tell you the truth. That's why I feel like I'm qualified to say it. But sure enough, man, I spewed all kinds of hurt toward my mom. And just like I told my friend in response to the video she sent, I was like, you know what, all that stuff, it doesn't matter. She wanted to know what my position was. But naturally with this brain of mine, I took something totally different from it, you know. Of course, I did have the opinion that, yeah, him coming in with the camera on, putting his father on the spot, that's what I mean by him hurting his, trying to hurt his father. I thought he was trying to weaponize his identity as a means of, hurting his father. I thought that was the case, but I also thought his father raised him to not respect him, it seemed. He didn't raise him to respect him in such a way to where he would never even think to do something like that. He didn't raise him in a way to feel like he respected his son in such a way so that his son didn't feel like he had to hurt his father in such a way. I think it starts there. It's like, maybe he didn't know his son identified that way, but regardless of what, if you don't raise your kid to have certain, expectations about who they need to be in your eyes, then you'll never have that type of resentment in the first place. I'm not saying coerce them to be one thing or another, because I think we take it too far these days. Trying to tell kids they gotta be this, or they tell them what their choices are before they realize what it is. I don't know if we should be laying out their choices for them like it's clothing, but if they come to you and say this, that, and the third, I think shunning them is the wrong way to go. I think if they come to you saying, I don't really know what's going on, I think shunning them is the way to go. Not the way to go, rather. It's definitely not. So that's where you go wrong. You start telling your kids, okay, you need to be this way. Don't. If you do anything else than this, we're going to have problems, because that's when they start having problems with you. Or even worse, problems with themselves. Suppressing certain things just to meet those standards doesn't mean that they're actually what it is you want them to be. They're not compelled to actually feel that way. They're just going to kill themselves trying to be that for you. Sometimes literally. I don't think parents know how much they can hurt their kids, and vice versa, of course. But I think the parents going to be the ones that have to embrace the pain, because it's at the end of the day, it's your job to embrace that pain. I think that's part of the gig. You got to soften the blow for them. Be the guide for them. So if you're gonna shun them for who they are, how can you possibly be the proper guide? You're failing at your job. I feel like for those of us who believe in God, I don't think God gave you a kid to say, hey, I'm gonna give you this child and you're gonna raise them to be a certain way, but if they deviate from that way, you're relieved from being their parent. I don't think it works that way. I think you still have to be their parent. I think you still got to be that person's parent. I think you're still on the hook for all that comes with that. So, yeah, man. I just feel like it's not something to take for granted either, especially if you love your children, especially if you love your parents. I don't think you should take those moments and those responsibilities for granted. And I don't know the solution for pleasing parents who have these expectations. I've been listening to these conversations my whole life. And I was very fortunate to be raised in such a way where I could be who my mother would accept. I was lucky enough to be someone my mother accepted. Because if I would have came out the wrong way, I'm pretty sure I would have got resistance too. Judging by my mother's opinions, yes, would not have worked. I don't know that she would have kicked me out. I don't think she would have treated me poorly, but there would have been some disconnect for sure. There would have been. And that doesn't make me feel too good. I'm not gonna lie to you. But I just think it's par for the course. I think that's just part of our culture. You know what I mean? It's part of the black experience in America. You know, we don't go for certain things. We were raised not to accept certain things. We believe certain things are not of God, and because of it, we're not gonna be all right with it. But the older I get and the more I go deeper into my own spirit and start asking God certain things about how he wants me to move, I find that that's not necessarily the path I need to take with how I need to approach the people that he brings into my world. I don't need to be looking at people saying you need to be a certain way, or I'm not going to be cool with you, or I'm not going to be able to be in solidarity with you. I think he made me more so a person who's very comfortable with himself, who's been through enough in his own life to say, whatever you got going on isn't necessarily going to do anything at all to me. I ain't changing who I am. I'm not going to be discovering something that isn't already here in that way. And it's just one of those situations where I can live in the presence of so many different people and just kind of be myself and hope that they will be themselves too. Root for them to win just like I root for you. There are certain things that obviously my brain don't want to take in, certain things that I'm not open to, you know. I'm open-minded but not open to everything, right? I think we all have our level of that. Our prejudices, our norms that aren't normal, that have been indoctrines in our head by the various places that we grew up in, circumstances we've been around, stuff that probably doesn't even relate to everywhere we're going to go. We'll have to unlearn in order to survive in certain places. I said all of that to say you're not unwelcome here for who you are or what you're about. My only hope is that if you spend any time listening to me, that you will look at the moment you're in and maybe the moment after this video and just appreciate it for the moment you're in. If you got people that you love next to them, seize that moment and understand you're alive together in this moment, this second. And for whatever that's worth, if it's a problem or if it's a celebration time, whatever the moment is, get the most out of that in a good way, in a positive way, in a way that you can live with for a long time. Because as I told my friend, when you have feuds with your loved ones, when you have these bickerings, you have these domestic situations, whatever it may be, when they pass away, all those moments actually are after that, it's just you in a dark room by yourself. That's what those moments are. Memories that just haunt you, depending on how you handle them. Or memories that comfort you, depending on how you handle them. But that's the point. It's how you handle those memories will determine how you feel in that room. It'll determine how you feel, or whether or not you want to turn the lights on or sit there in the dark and continue feeling how you're feeling. That's why you treat people with forgiveness. That's why you let certain things slide and maybe not let other things slide. There's a balance to that. But the point is, you do what you can live with, because that's what it is that ultimately you're going to be left with. Those choices, those memories, those feelings. I can tell you I feel a lot better about the times where I came to good conclusions or good compromises, I guess, with my mother. You know what I mean? I can think about many times where we could have let things get worse and it didn't. Moments where we had an argument but we ended the night hugging, or we had an argument but we ended the night enjoying the Lakers. Like, these are things that cut down on the sadness that I felt in this dark room. You understand what I'm saying? When she's no longer alive for me to call and say, hey mama, how you doing? Or call her to say, hey, I was upset about this, can we talk about it? You know what I mean? You know, you don't get the privilege of even arguing once it's over. And depending on who you are, will vary in terms of how much that matters to you. You know what I mean? But I think at the end of the day, if you love the people you're discussing and you love the people you're next to, you want to have good memories and you want to leave them with good memories or what have you. That's really what I'm saying. That's all it really come down to. That's what it came down to for me. You just remember more so the times when things were better, and you lean on those. But if you don't have enough of those, which is what I'm telling you, I don't know what you lean on in that dark room. I don't know what you lean on when it's time to be, dealing with the worst of things without them. I think that's what it is about, I just hope that gentleman or those gentlemen, those individuals who are living with one another, who father and son, understand that moment that they had, that they captured on film, showed all of us that they didn't understand that. They didn't understand that at all. They were too caught up in their moment. They were too caught up in their circumstance. Too caught up in how they felt about one another. Too caught up in how they felt about how they felt about how they felt about. That never-ending self-absorption is the word I would call it. Being self-absorbed, that's what that was. They were both caught up in their own feelings. Father didn't want to be disrespected. I'm embarrassed. I want my son to look a certain way in pictures. I want my son to be a representation of the man that I want to be, or whatever it is. Father, my dad doesn't accept me for all that I am, even though maybe all that I am needs to mature some so that it can be more worthy of being respected. Maybe I'm not holding myself in a way that would garner the respect that I'm demanding when I come in the house with my camera on, looking to weaponize my identity against my own father. I don't think either one of those men were right. I think the father is who to blame, though, because it's your job to guide the son to make sure that he never becomes that type of man. And I'm not talking about who he identifies as. I'm talking about how he handled the situation and ultimately how he handled his father. There needs to be more respect there. There needs to be more respect between myself and my mother in the past too. But you know what it just came down to? Nothing. She's gone. That's the point. It's just me and my memories and the wisdom I have to tell all of y'all to just care about your loved ones. Don't bicker over bull crap. Don't try to make somebody they're not supposed to be just to make you happy about who they are. Fix yourself. Fix yourself. That's the missing piece to the situation. Dad, fix yourself. If you don't accept your son, it's not your son that needs to change, it's you. He gonna be who he is. You the one that need to adapt. Don't you get it? You gave birth to him, or rather gave life to him through the birth canal of a woman, of course. But at the end of the day, it's one of those situations. I'm not a father. I can't tell him how to raise his son. It don't come with a handbook. I don't know nothing when it comes to stuff like that. All I know is I was a son. That's all I know. From that perspective, I can say I wish I did things differently. I'm glad that I had a mother in the first place. You know what I mean? That matters. That part absolutely matters. And so just appreciate yourself, man. Even if your circumstance ain't perfect, try to gain from it what you take from it, the fruit you can, and just know that this too shall pass. And so do the people around us, man. We don't keep each other, man. It's a morbid world, but there's wisdom to take from and love to take from the moment. And that room don't have to be dark. You do enough forgiving, you do enough unselfish acts, you overcome, you kill that ego, you give that person a break, you be transparent, you hold down your code and be true to who it is you are, be honest or whatever it is that's real. You won't even be sitting in a dark room. You'll be in a room full of people ready to comfort you with the love that you've put out, ready to meet you when you need it the most. That room don't even have to be dark. That's all I'm saying. That's literally all I'm saying. BDF 44, I thank y'all for watching. I'm out.